The Galactic Union Academy floated in the cold dark between two suns, a silver ring of corridors, training halls, and ambitions, orbiting a gas giant the color of a bruise. 10,000 cadets from 63 species walked its halls. Most of them walked carefully. Joe did not walk carefully. Joe walked the way humans always walked, shoulders loose, chin up, eyes scanning everything. He was 22 years old, barely 1.80 m, with calloused hands and the kind of quiet confidence that made other species uncomfortable. He had been at the academy for 7 months. In those 7 months, he had broken 3 training records, failed 1 diplomatic etiquette exam. He had called the Vorthaxi ambassador buddy, and somehow befriended nearly everyone on sublevel 4. His partner, Lily, who everyone called me because she had once, very calmly, told an arrogant Keth upperclassman, "That's me you're talking about, and I suggest you reconsider," walked beside him now through the main corridor of Deck 9. Me was small, precise, and terrifying in a way that took people time to realize. She had long dark hair pulled into a practical braid, eyes that missed nothing, and a habit of finishing people's sentences before they realized they'd started them. She was also, by any reasonable measure, the most dangerous person in their cohort. She just didn't feel the need to advertise it. Around them, the corridor was busy. Cadets from the New York delegation, a 4-armed, mineral-scaled species from the rim, moved in clusters. A navigator floated past on silent gravitic feet. 2 engineers argued over a schematic near a wall panel, their bioluminescent crests flashing orange with frustration. A pair of high upperclassmen strode past, their chitinous exoskeletons clicking on the deck plating. And near the center of the corridor, occupying space the way only the truly arrogant can, all of it, stood What was Keth Prime? Keth Prime were the reason the word imposing existed. They averaged 2.5 meters tall, had redundant organ systems, bones reinforced with calcium silicate lattice, and a nervous system so fast they could catch a falling object before they consciously registered it had moved. What was considered, even among his own species, exceptional. He had won the Academy's full-contact combat trial 3 cycles running. He had never lost a confrontation. He considered this not luck, but the natural order of things. He had noticed the 2 humans. He always noticed humans. They were a source of endless amusement, soft, slow, single-hearted, frighteningly fragile. The Academy admitted them as a diplomatic courtesy. Everyone knew this. Even, we assumed, the humans. He stepped into Joe's path. Joe stopped. Me stopped half a step behind him, and in that half step, she had already assessed 6 different things about his posture, weight distribution, and the placement of his hands. Human, was said. The translator bead at his jaw rendered it in flat, standard galactic. You're in my corridor. Joe looked left. Looked right. Looked back at Wa. There's about 40 meters of corridor here, Joe said pleasantly. I was using roughly one of them. A cluster of cadets had already begun to slow down, the instinct toward spectacle apparently universal across species. Wa leaned forward, closing the distance to about 1 meter. He was using the full geometry of his body the way Keth Prime learned from birth, projecting size, projecting certainty. It worked on everyone. He had made a cadet faint once, simply by stepping too close. You humans, was said, are permitted here as a courtesy. You should remember that. You are physically inferior in every measurable way. You have 1 heart. Your bones are calcium. You are slow. You are fragile. You should move when those better than you require the space. Me's expression did not change. Joe tilted his head slightly. Joe said. Or repeated. Just thinking, Joe said. You listed all the things that are true. 1 heart, calcium bones, slower nervous system. All accurate. He paused. You missed a few things, though. Was straightened to his full height. There is nothing you have that I lack. You've never been hunted, Joe said simply. The corridor had gone quiet. Will blinked, a slow, deliberate gesture of contempt. What? Your species reached spaceflight without ever being prey, Joe said. Ours didn't. For 100,000 years, before we had tools, before we had fire, things bigger than us, faster than us, with better senses than us, wanted to eat us. And we survived anyway. He smiled slightly. You have redundant organs because your biology needed them. We got redundant strategies instead. Pattern recognition, coalition building, endurance, the ability to function while injured, while exhausted, while scared. The ability to, and here's the part your combat record doesn't account for, adapt in the middle of a fight. Well, moved. He didn't decide to move, exactly. It was the kind of motion that comes from a body that has always been the fastest thing in the room, deciding it was done listening. He reached for Joe's collar, a grab intended to lift and end the conversation physically. He didn't complete it. Me had already moved, had begun moving, in fact, at the first micro-shift of his weight. She didn't intercept the grab. She didn't block it. She stepped into his space instead, inside the arc of his extending arm, drove one elbow upward into the nerve cluster beneath his second arm's joint, a spot that appeared in exactly zero Keth Prime combat literature because no one had ever bothered to catalog it as a vulnerability since no opponent had ever been close enough to reach it. And as his arm locked involuntarily, she used his own forward momentum to redirect, stepped aside, and was 2.5 meters of calcium silicate. Reinforced elite genetics met the deck. The sound was considerable. Will lay still for 2 full seconds, not unconscious, but genuinely processing the fact that the floor was where he was now. Me stepped back to where she had been standing, adjusted her braid, looked at her fingernails. Joe crouched down to his eye level. She spent 4 years studying every species in the upper academy cohorts, Joe said quietly. Cataloged nerve clusters, reflex arcs, balance dependencies. Humans do that. We find the angle. He stood. Your combat record is impressive, genuinely. But you built it against opponents who fought you the way you expected to be fought. Will pushed himself up slowly. His face, insofar as Keth Prime faces communicated, was unreadable. His second arm was still half numb. Around them, the corridor remained absolutely silent. Joe reached down and offered his hand. It was such a human gesture that it landed like a small explosion. Instinctive, offered without strategy, without theater. Just offered. Will looked at the hand for a long moment. Then he took it. Let Joe help him to his feet. The corridor exhaled. Later, in the training hall on sublevel 2, Joe found me running calibration drills on the sparring system. He sat on the equipment bench and watched her move. Economical, precise, not a centimeter wasted. He could have broken both of us if that had gone differently, Joe said. Yes, me agreed. You were terrifying back there. I was efficient back there, she corrected, not breaking the drill pattern. Terrifying is a perception. I just moved to where the geometry worked. Joe was quiet for a moment. You cataloged him. I catalog everyone, she said simply. It's not threatening. It's reading. Humans read things. We've always read things. She paused the drill, turned to look at him. Was never been in a fight he couldn't win by being bigger and faster. That means he's never had to think during one. That's the gap. Joe nodded slowly. Outside the hull, the gas giant rolled past in its ancient orbit, indifferent to the drama of the small beings on the silver ring above it. Do you think he'll be angry? Joe asked. Me considered this with the same precision she gave everything. I think, she said finally, he'll be curious. And that's more useful. She went back to her drill. The Keth Prime who beat us join us. The ones who can't imagine being beaten, those are the ones we need to be ready for. Joe looked at his hands. Calcium bones. One heart. Slow. He thought about 100,000 years of something chasing his ancestors through tall grass in the dark. He thought about how those ancestors had survived anyway. He smiled. 3 weeks later, was showed up at their training session. He didn't explain. He just stood at the edge of the mat, arms folded, watching. Me glanced at him, then at Joe. Then she moved to make room. Show me the drill, was said. She did. Humanity, FCK, yeah, because we didn't survive by being the strongest. We survived by being the kind of thing that figures out how.